Hi everyone, I'm Jada Burt and this is In My Tracks. You know that feeling when a song comes on and it's so good that it feels like you're frozen in time? Well, that's what this podcast is all about. Songs that stop me in my tracks. I chat with musicians about their inspiration, process, and challenges, and you discover your new favorite songs. Spencer Merk is a Cincinnati-based trombonist that plays until he is blue in the face, literally. He is also a composer, arranger, and educator. Last year was a big year for Spencer. Not only did he win the International Trombone Association's J.J. Johnson competition for jazz trombonists under the age of 25, but he also released his debut album, Last Place in a Bear Race, in November of 2022. A body of work that I believe is the beginning of an impressive catalog. Let's get tracking. Hello and welcome to In My Tracks with Jada Burt. Today I'm speaking with Spencer Merk about his debut album, Last Place in a Bear Race. And I'm also here with his collaborators on the album. Will you all please introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name's Derek Johnson. I played drums on the album.
Hey, my name is Ethan Marsh. I played bass on the album.
And my name's Christian Paradiso, and I play saxophone on the album.
And then Ryan Jones played piano. That is a very powerful group of musicians. How do you feel now that your album is out in the world, Spencer?
Obviously, I feel a lot of things, a lot of very strong and mixed emotions, but I would say two of the strongest ones would be relief and pride. I'm very proud of the work that I did and the work that everyone that worked on it did. And I think that the finished product is a really good representation of what we were all trying to achieve. And then at the same time, the process was very long and there were a lot of difficult and stressful aspects of it. So now that it's out there in the world, I'm pretty, relieved. Feel like I could take a deep breath.
Absolutely. There's so much to be proud about. Like debut album, the circumstances definitely weren't easy considering we're still in a pandemic, multiple people, multiple places. It's a huge accomplishment. So what's the story behind the album title? It's pretty comical.
Yeah. So I've always, I don't know, I've heard story, this allegory for a while, that, there's two friends walking in the woods and they come across a bear, and one of the friends kneels down and starts praying, and then the other friend kneels down and starts tying his shoes. And then the friend that's praying says to the other one, it's like, why are you tying your shoes? There's no way that you're going to be able to outrun that bear. And then he says, I don't need to outrun the bear. I need to outrun you. I've always thought that was just, number one, funny, but number two, a good allegory for how people approach problems, the way that people confront adversity. And it was the name of a tune first. I wrote it down as a tune name first, and I wrote a song with it. And then kind of when I was figuring out all the songs that were going to be on the album, I was like, I think this really kind of, I don't know. I think it's the most clever title, and I think it's the best representation of sort of what I was trying to say with the album.
That is an interesting thing to pull an entire album from. Like, how did you come up with the concept of the album cover? It's pretty hilarious.
Yeah. So I think that, well, first off, I've always loved album covers. Like, so such a very important part of the the package for me. Not just the music, but like the album cover as the visual representation of the music, and sort of like if you were looking around in like the music store and you see the CD that's got a cover, it's like, oh, I want that. I don't even know what's on it, but I want it because the cover's cool. I've always felt that way. And I've always, in the jazz world, really nothing beats those classic Blue Note album covers with, just the famous images and the big bold fonts, and it all comes together to create something that's really, unique and really classic, those Blue Note covers. So I wanted to kind of emulate that style. And I had known about the image that we wanted to use for a while. I knew that um, the picture of the bear chasing the band with me in last place was what we wanted to do, and then I wanted the rest of the cover to be like, have that Blue Note style where it's like a bold font with like some simple colors. And as a finished product, I think it, like the rest of the album, it's very serious and well polished, while at the same time not taking itself too seriously and having a humorous and playful element to it.
What are some of the album covers that inspired you? I know you mentioned Blue Note covers, but do you have any specific ones that you'd like to share?
Put me on the spot.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. One of the first jazz albums that I ever really got into, especially from a trombone player, was Curtis Fuller's The Opener. And it's just got this black and white image on it where he's just, just a candid image taken during a recording session. But just the way that, the way that they've got the contrast and everything, it's just, you can really feel it, it puts you in, the studio with those musicians, and you feel like you're a part of history just by, looking and getting lost in this album cover. And then, they've got the name of the album, The Opener, in this really cool font with just, simple red coloring. And it doesn't take up a lot of space. It's just sort of like the focus is definitely on the image. And I think that's something that I tried to copy a little bit with this, because the image is certainly, it speaks for itself. It's the attention grabber.
It's a memorable album cover for sure. I know. I definitely got a chuckle out of it when I saw it. But there are a lot of intriguing song titles throughout the album, such as Shrek's Song and Mr. Kong. What inspired you to make pop culture references in your song titles?
Yeah, well, ever since I was a kid, I've loved stories and I've loved characters, and I've always appreciated songs that told stories or had distinct characters in them. So I think that during this time in my life where I was really trying to figure out how to, write music, having a specific character or a certain story in mind was really helpful in directing the mood of that piece for sure. Like in Shrek's Song, I always envisioned that as like Shrek and Fiona in the 60s, like going on a date, like, picking Fiona up in the convertible, going to the malt shop and watching a drive-in movie. Like, or with Mr. Kong, it's like, I know this is ridiculous, but Donkey Kong is like a Wall Street banking executive who's like, saving and ruining lives every day on the floors of Wall Street. It's like, just having that picture in your mind is helpful when you're making compositional decisions.
It takes what we already have in the modern age, like our current version of Shrek and our current version of, the Mario Kart character, Donkey Kong, and you're making it your own. And it's interesting to think about those characters that way, since since your pieces aren't lyrical. It gives more to chew on. But what initially inspired you to write these songs and ultimately create an album rather than release a bunch of singles?
That's a good question. We did release one single, released Muffins as sort of like a taste of the album, and I think we released it 2 weeks before the album. And I thought that was really cool and also kind of funny, because if you listen to the whole song, if you listen to the whole album, Muffins is like completely different than the entire rest of the album.
Yeah.
So that really plays into, I guess, what my overall goal for releasing a total package for the album was, recording something that everyone could enjoy, like regardless of their background or how old they are or anything like that. I wanted it to be something that had stuff that everyone would like. If you like, classic, like swing jazz, if you like blues, if you like modern kind of electronic stuff, if you like smoother things, like I wanted to release just one album that had a little bit of everything on it.
Covered a lot of bases while still like being cohesive, and that's really hard to do. What did the process of writing and recording the album entail? You have a lot of collaborators, and they're all in different places. So what did that process look like?
So, luckily, I consider this a great privilege is that the people that I work with, and I'm talking mostly about these guys, they respect me as a composer, and they're also great musicians. So if I put something in front of them and I say, hey, play this, they'll do it, like regardless of how difficult or seemingly nonsensical it is. They always find a way to do it. And because I respect them, if they come to me with certain, suggestions, or if they have a new idea about taking something in a different direction in the song, um, that can take that can become a new addition through collaboration. I think a good example of that was on the track that we're going to talk about today, Smooth Cruise. Um, During the solo sections, you can hear during both me and Christian's solo, there's a rhythm section break um, where the soloist is kind of by themselves for a little bit, and then the rhythm section comes back in on a figure that we had already played in the melody. That was just something that I think Ryan just threw out as an idea. It's like, hey, let's try this. And it didn't even do that until the actual recording session. And we did it, and it sounded great, and it made the album. But I guess the big secret is, playing these songs as a group over time in different places and different situations. That way you can really let the songs sort of sort themselves out. And if people have ideas or something sounds better one way, or, um, just, playing the songs live enough where you know how they're supposed to go.
It really shows in the finished product that like collaboration was valued, and I could tell like many ideas were put together, like many thoughts went into all of the songs. How did you know when each song was complete? I can only imagine how long it took to kind of finalize each song since there's so much going on.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of just like constraints and administrative factors that go into that decision. Like when you record in a studio, you have a certain amount of time that you're allowed to be there, a certain amount of time that you paid for. So it happens sometimes where there's a song where it's like, well, we don't have as much time to spend on this one. So if this is the take that we like, maybe we could have gotten another one, but we don't have time. So let's move on. Luckily, I don't feel like that came into play too much on this session, but since there's 11 tracks on the album, we had a lot of ground to cover. So there were some songs where it's like, all right, we got 2 or 3 good takes of this, we got to move on. But really, just knowing when a song is supposed to end it's a difficult thing as a composer, because sometimes you just have a lot of ideas and it's easy to just keep piling stuff on. So I think it's an underappreciated skill for composers, knowing where to end your song. And I feel like all these songs on this album have a clear, beginning, middle, and end, and everything sounds really natural. There's nothing that really runs on, or the opposite of that feels, too short.
It's interesting that you brought up the point that sometimes it's out of your control whether or not a song is complete, because you have to move on and deal with the time that you've paid for, the time you have left. So what was the most challenging song to complete given those constraints?
Well, I would be very interested to hear everyone's take on this. But for me, the obvious answer is Scene of the Crime, just because of there's a lot of individually technically challenging parts on there, as well as some really tricky parts to play as an ensemble. So Scene of the Crime is definitely the most difficult in my book. But what do you guys think?
Trying to
Yeah, I
think.
definitely. Oh, oops.
No, you
I
go ahead.
definitely second that. I remember like, I mean, between like the whole like harpsichord thing, and then like me like switching basses, and then like I'm like doing like the classical thing for a second. Like that definitely took the most time and effort to complete. But it was worth it.
I can get behind that as well. Just a lot of like counting and listening and making sure that we're all like in the same spot while navigating, like as Spencer said, like the technical demands of all those things. I'd say a quick shout out to how difficult uh, Bonnie McMurray is, just because there's a whole bunch of notes. But
Yes.
you know,
Oh
scene
yeah,
of the
that
crime
one.
for sure.
Yeah, Bonnie McMurray's pretty insane because of all the different style changes as well. Like because you hear like the end, they're like the melody, and then you get to the solos, and you're just in a completely different space. But I would say, I don't know, probably Scene of the Crime is the hardest.
I know Derek had to take a really. I've always thought this was funny how, as you know, horn solos in my tunes are usually over pretty reasonable changes and styles, but every time I write a drum solo into one of my songs, it's over a very difficult vamp. And on Scene of the Crime, the drum solo at the end of that certainly is in line with that statement. He's playing
Absolutely.
over different time signatures and really offbeat like hits, but he crushes it.
Oh,
One of
thank
my
you, man.
favorite moments from the album.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you all said the same song, so that's pretty interesting. Was anybody close to quitting because of that one?
Nah, you got to accept the challenge.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
And
It's
then,
always, yeah.
what did you say?
No, it's always just fun to accept Spencer's challenges. His music is always so hard sometimes to play, like Scene of the Crime and Last Place in a Bear Race. There's a few other ones on the album too, like Bonnie McMurray too, especially. But like, there's one I wanted to say real quick: Q's Blues, or Quarantine's Blues. I have a funny little thing about that. The first time we played that, I didn't really realize it, but it's like a 13-bar blues, and I got lost pretty much instantly, like in the form of the song. So I was playing really, really poorly throughout it and very lost, and everybody's looking at me like, "What are you doing, man? Where are you at?" and everything. But Spencer just writes like, sometimes they're just simple, but very challenging differences, like stuff you wouldn't expect. So I appreciate that about his writing.
Makes for great music, of course. With that being said, what were some of the most memorable parts of working on this album? We mentioned time constraints in the studio, difficult compositions. So yeah, I'd love to know what it was like actually putting it together in the time that you had.
I thought that everyone was really efficient and well prepared, and we were able to focus pretty much exclusively on the music. So a lot of the memorable moments, informative moments in my recollection are just times when, even though we were in the recording studio, which is a pretty like sterile and difficult environment to be creative in, we were still making really cool music and having these really nice musical and creative moments together, which was kind of the first time I had experienced that in a studio environment, was on this album. So just moments like that where, you know, you finish a take and it's like, wow, that's like, that actually sounded good. Go us. You know? Does anyone else have any memorable moments from putting this together?
Yeah. Sorry, Christian. I'm gonna hop in here real quick. Yeah, I remember actually rehearsing was probably the most memorable. I remember there was a very like blizzardy type of Cincinnati evening one time.
Oh yeah.
I remember I walked to your house with my bass and I almost like slipped on ice 3 times. And like I got there and I was like, all right, and we shedded it out. And it was good. And like it felt good. It was like I have that image like very implanted in my memory. I can go there. So Yeah, that was my favorite.
I'm glad you didn't die.
Me too.
Yeah, ice is rough.
It's icy. It's icy. For sure.
Going along the same lines, I would be remiss if we didn't mention the actual act of taking the picture that is on the front of the album.
Absolutely.
It definitely was, in terms of just like difficult things or things that took the most time. It's like this was the thing. It's like it took us so many tries to get this picture correct, but it was very worth it.
And it was like,
And just the weather and everything, like
Yeah.
all of us freezing, just like yelling at each other, like, no, you need to run slower. All this great stuff. It was really fantastic and quite memorable.
yeah, it was
Do you
very
remember the
cold
little
that day.
kid? You
Oh
remember
my
there's like a
gosh.
little kid with his mom that walked past. We just took it in the alley behind the studio downtown, and there's this little kid that came by with his mom while we were taking the picture, and he thought that our friend in the bear costume was like some mascot, so he came over, and like we were already pressed for time trying to take this picture. It was frustrating. It was so cold, and this little kid's like coming over to take pictures with this
Oh my
random
gosh.
dude in the inflatable bear costume. Yeah, hilarious.
Get away from me. Yeah, typical kids. So funny.
Mhm.
That is hilarious. Thinking further about the process of making this album, what did you learn about yourselves while working on it? There's a lot going on, so I'd love to know how you feel now that it's out in the world and you can kind of like look back on that time.
I definitely learned a lot about how I handle long-term projects. Learned a lot of, let's say, unsavory things about how I handle long-term projects. It's like there's so many things looking back now. It's like, man, you could have shaved 2 months off of this thing if you just like did this when you decided to do it. There's like, a lot of things I was dragging my feet on, or maybe was a little bit inefficient. So like with this being the first album, I can tell you right now, the next one is going to be a lot more streamlined from the administrative process. And it's like, I feel like I know what to do now. And just, a lot of new things that I'd never learned about in school, or I had never experienced myself, like, performance rights, or, physical copies, or uploading and streaming and royalty splits and all this, like a lot of technical music business type things that this was really the my first opportunity to learn about all of it. So I guess if I'm saying what I learned about myself, I learned that I could be a lot more proactive and efficient on the administrative side, and also even when you're faced with a bunch of new challenges and things you don't know about, if you believe in if you believe in your finished product, then you'll do what it takes to make it happen, even though it's scary and difficult.
Definitely learning cool music was such a fun part. Like going back on what I said earlier, like Spencer writes music that is just completely all over the place. And, as a drummer, it is very hard to think about all these different styles and everything, and like trying to play them like how they're supposed to sound and everything. And just learning how to be a versatile, like for myself, being a versatile drummer on this album was a fun experience for me. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you guys mentioned a lot of good things. I mean, Spencer, thinking about the business side, that is the least interesting part of the process. But it seems like as an artist, slap you in the face because it really matters and it can add time. It can just make things a lot more difficult because it would be nice if most of the time was spent, playing and writing. There's just this huge beast on the outside. So I totally get that issue. But yeah, it's great that you learned from this experience and will be able to improve on the next album.
Yeah, I was lucky to have I reached out to so many um, you know, colleagues and mentors before, during, and after the whole process. So there's a lot of people who I owe a lot to. But I think if I'm going to mention just one of them, it's got to be Brandon Coleman, who really helped with this process. We released it on his label, so he helped out a lot with the distribution and licensing and all that. On top of recording the album, mixing and mastering it, and designing the album cover. Like he's been a gigantic help through all of this, and without him, all of the like we were saying, music business stuff would have been a very difficult process. So Brandon Coleman's the man.
That's awesome to have people to lean on. Have people not only to lean on for advice, but to actually help you make the finished product. So, what would you say the community in Cincinnati means to you as a jazz musician?
Well, just speaking for myself, like I owe everything to the Cincinnati jazz community. Like I've lived in Cincinnati my whole life, and certainly my whole life as a musician. Just everything that I've learned and like everything that I've accomplished is because I was brought up in this scene. All of the older musicians that you want to learn from are have always been super friendly and willing to help me. Um, you go out to people's gigs as a young kid, and they notice you're there, and they're happy to talk to you about music. And then when you get a little bit older and you start getting on gigs with them, they're super friendly and understanding, and point you in the right direction for things that you need to practice or things that you need to listen to. And the city itself, I think, is the perfect environment for musicians, at least for my taste, because there's a lot of opportunities to play a lot of different types of music. So I really had so many experiences playing with musicians that were older and better than me that just like really formed who I am as a musician. And even to this day, I mean, I cherish every opportunity I get to play with the great musicians in this city. So I can't say enough good about Cincinnati.
It's really cool that you said that because Cincinnati is just not the first city people think of when, jazz comes to mind. But the scene is not only vibrant, but I'm able to see as a listener that the community is very tight and, like you said, helpful and just giving towards each other and towards the outer community. What do you hope to continue to bring to the jazz scene here and also the world as you continue to expand and release more music and travel and play your music everywhere?
Yeah, I guess I don't really think a lot about what I'm trying to, like, my message as an artist, or what I'm trying to contribute to the world. I'm just I just think about it as doing my thing, doing what works for me. But I do think it's important to write, record, and release original music that is meaningful to you. So I definitely hope to continue doing that throughout the rest of my career. And another thing that I really cherish is making music with my friends, and sometimes that involves creating musical opportunities to play with my friends. So that was one of my favorite parts about this album is like, we were all young musicians on the album. We're all, pretty experienced, especially for our age, but we are young. So it was a good opportunity to be like, hey, let's, sort of show everyone what we've got at this point in time. Let's, get it down on wax, so to speak, sort of as a representation of our generation. So I don't know. Those are the things that I hope to accomplish. And like I said, it's not something I consciously think about as like what I'm putting out to the world, but just these are the things that I enjoy doing and that I think are important.
Absolutely. And it's probably best not to think too much about that. Honestly, I could definitely see that interfering. It's great that you guys have each other to express your ideas and actually record and release your music. It's a wonderful thing. Hey everyone! Hope you're enjoying getting to know Spencer and his collaborators so far. I wanted to take a little break to introduce you to some of his music. This song of his really stopped me in my tracks. It features one of the most memorable melodies of 2022. I have gotten it stuck in my head many times, and it quickly became one of my go-to songs for my late night drives because it pairs beautifully with the Cincinnati skyline. Here's Smooth Cruise by Spencer Merk. So I picked your song Smooth Cruise from the album. It was an absolute standout for me. I actually listened to this song a lot. What inspired you to write this song?
Well, it started as my attempt at writing a smooth jazz song. Um, it was just like a challenge for myself to try and write something in a style that I've never written in before. And it turns out it's very hard to write something that you don't have any experience really playing or listening to. But it sort of got me headed in the right direction, in terms of like this sort of smooth, laid back kind of electronic funk and soul influence of it. So that's kind of what, what got me headed in the right direction, what inspired me to write it.
You challenge yourself to write in a style that you don't listen to. That is definitely tough, but it doesn't sound that way. So props to you guys on that one. So what did the process of writing and recording it entail? Was it as difficult to record it and kind of put it together as it was to write it, since it was a new style for you?
So one of the things I love about Cincinnati, one of the things I love about these musicians is that most of the jazz musicians that you come across are very fluent in a wide variety of styles. So, I mean, that was very important on this album in particular, but I bring this to them and I say, all right, Ethan, you're gonna switch from playing a stand-up upright bass to an electric bass guitar, and he's able to do that with no problem. And got to tell Derek, it's like, instead of playing like a swing, jazz, or Latin groove or anything like that, you got to play like funk or a soul groove. And then Ryan's on a different instrument as well. He switched from piano to Fender Rhodes electric piano, which is a whole different beast. So it might seem difficult to be able to switch between those sorts of requirements, but luckily all of these musicians are professionals and are able to do it seamlessly. But in terms of writing it, this was one of those songs that seems once I got started, I just kept going. It kind of wrote itself. It's kind of funny. The name comes from an experience that me and Christian went through a few summers ago. We were playing in this band where they didn't refer to any of the members of the band by their actual names. You had to have a nickname that you were assigned. So, Christian, you care to tell them your nickname?
It was Mr. Incredible.
Yeah, he was Mr. Incredible. And then there was a man whose nickname was Obama, because he kind of looked like Obama. So he looked at me one day and said, "Man, you look like Tom Cruise," which I totally don't agree with. No one has ever said that before or since. But they gave me the name Smooth Cruise. And just the way that experience sort of played out, it was a very, very emotional roller coaster. I think Christian will agree. But I tried to communicate in the song the emotion of like expecting one thing but receiving something else.
That is hilarious. What were you guys expecting from this group?
It was something we expected to be a really big, potentially career-altering opportunity, just because of like how high profile the one of the artists was. And then we quickly found out that it was like it seemed like we were the only rational thinkers or people that really lived in reality at all. I don't know, Christian, is that putting it in a accurate way?
Yeah, that was exactly how I would put it. It was presented to us as like a very bright lights, big city opportunity, but it definitely got to a point where I felt like, or Spencer put it very well, is like we were living in the real world and no one else around us was doing the same.
Oh no.
It's,
Well, I guess it's good that you guys had each other, because I imagine that would have
Absolutely.
been isolating and possibly traumatizing. So it's nice at least that you guys have that memory.
Yeah, now we can laugh about it. And honestly, if there wasn't someone else there, I don't think anyone would believe me.
Back to Smooth Cruise. The melody is stunning. Sometimes I'll like have it stuck in my head. I'm like, yeah, this is certified bop.
Gotcha.
Yeah, right? How did you write it?
So let me think. Yeah, so I was writing this song in a period of my musicianship where I was really into simple and beautiful melodies. And I was just starting to get into like hip hop and soul music. So it was a really interesting junction of two you know, styles of music that I really loved. And I didn't consciously do this, but those two things kind of merged when I was writing this song. So the melody itself is like, it pretty much just uses one major scale for most of it. But because of that, when you stray from that major scale and you go to a different key center, it's very jarring and emotional. And even if you have no idea what's going on musically, like you can feel that change. And I really, really like songs that do that, that are able to take you through different moods and emotions just by a few simple things. Another thing that I had in my mind while I was writing it was just like, it would be cool if someone would sing this. And now I'm not a lyric writer at all, but that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're trying to write a good melody, or, you know, a simple melody, is that someone should be able to sing this.
Absolutely, yeah.
Layla Hathaway hasn't emailed me back yet, though.
Oh no. That's definitely singable. Like I said before, a standout for sure. Thinking about the placement of all of the tracks on the song, how did you know that this one was meant to be track number 9 on the album?
The track listing, or the track order, was one part of this process that I completely did not expect to be as much of a pain in the butt as it was. Like, that's not something that I considered at all as something that might be potentially challenging. But man, when I went to put these things in order, it felt like I was just doing everything wrong, and it's like, no one's gonna listen to this because you put this in the wrong order. It was hard, but I guess just where it landed, you know, I wanted to make sure that we didn't have songs with, you know, similar vibes in a row. So that's why this one, you know, it's separated from maybe like Scene of the Crime or Bonnie McMurray, that have more of a, you know, straightforward feel. But one of the unfortunate aspects is, this is like, when I look at the statistics of who listens to the songs, like this, not many people have listened to this song a whole bunch, which is, I thought that this would be, because of how accessible it is, I thought it would be one of the more popular songs. But I think because I put it so far back, people haven't listened to it as much, which I think is unfortunate.
Yeah, listening to albums in full is a task, but it's important. I think all albums should be listened to in full. But you don't have regrets on where you placed it, right?
Right. No, I don't think I have regrets with really anything on this album, other than it's like, man, I wish you practiced the trombone more when you were in the 8th grade, or something like that.
No. Yeah, we all hate our 8th grade selves. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that is true. That's what we all have in common. But how do you feel now, like when you listen to the song, you've had some time away from the writing and recording, and now like releasing stage. So have your feelings changed at all, like about the song?
No, I still love it. I love to listen to it, and I love to play it. And I think the main thing that I listen to now when I listen to the recording is just the groove that the rhythm section players put down. Ethan, Derek, and Ryan just really locked in on this one and made it smooth. I don't know. I would love to hear what a perspective from the rhythm section of like what it's. I don't know. Does this song make sense in terms of like, you know, playing together? Is it, you know, does it feel natural when you do it?
Yeah, completely. I remember it's like, it's kind of like, and this kind of like goes with the theme of the whole album for me and my perspective of it is like it coasts on the borderline of like cheesiness, but it's like right in that sweet spot where it's like, okay, this is not cheesy, this groove is really hard, but it's also like if you like took some of the feeling out of it, like it would be like, okay, this is kind of like this, I might hear this on an elevator somewhere, but like but then
No.
like you've got like the feeling and the intention in it, and so it like it actually grooves. I don't know. I love grooving with Ryan and Derek, and like I always like remember like looking up at Ryan. He's looking at me like he's laying something down, and like dude, it was priceless. I'll never forget that. But
It's definitely
Yeah,
always
bro.
great playing with Ryan. He is like one of the best I've ever played with when it comes to interacting with you. For sure, and especially also playing with Ethan. Like it's so easy playing with Ethan, and you know we've played together since we were both in high school. We crossed paths like once or twice, and I I always remember Ethan being this like just absolutely insane musician, and I always wanted to like be on that level. And now here we are making an album with one of my other friends, or a lot of my other friends, and just our paths crossing again. It's so cool. So yeah, a lot of respect for Ethan and Ryan.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to Smooth Cruise, that song, playing like smooth jazz and playing slow grooves like that is very hard. It's very hard, and on top of the fact that Spencer wrote a drum solo in at the very end of it was that was definitely a bit of a different take. You know, starting the song off super quiet and chill, and then going at the end and just going ham.
Yeah,
was
you know,
fun.
it's almost like it wasn't what you were expecting when you started listening to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember the first time we looked at it, and I'm like, oh, there's a drum solo at the end of this. What in the world? And the hits in that one are also kind of strange too.
Mm-hmm.
But always fun.
And
Yeah,
then me and
definitely.
Christian get to lay it back.
Yeah, it comes
Mhm.
through. It definitely comes through, like how well you all play together. One point in the song that is insane are the solos. Absolutely love them. Were they improvised on the spot? I know there was a place for them in the composition, but how did that work?
In the actual song, when I give everyone the sheet music, it's got the spot, and it's like this is where the solos happen. And then if we're just playing it on a gig out somewhere, then anyone can solo on it and do whatever. But when you're in the studio, we'll decide beforehand who's soloing where. So that's decided. But when we get to that part, it's just, you know, the rhythm section has the chords that they're going to adhere to, and the soloist knows those chords, and through their own training they know how to improvise over them effectively. But in terms of what they're actually playing, that is spontaneous improvisation, and that is something that is unique to jazz music. And in my opinion, that's what makes jazz music so special, and that's why I love playing it, is that we get that opportunity to improvise.
That is so cool because, yeah, they sound like they were written. So, in closing, really big question: which Shrek soundtrack is your favorite?
All right. I knew this question was coming.
Yep.
So I've got the winner, I've got second place, and I've got honorable mentions.
Okay.
So the winner has got to be Shrek 2
Yes.
for me. Mm-hmm. And then the original Shrek comes in a close second with some incredible moments, such as, you know, what is it? Bad Reputation, one of the most incredible scenes in cinematic history, in my opinion.
Yep.
But it just, I don't think you can beat Shrek 2's, you know, like Holding Out for a Hero, or Living La Vida Loca, Funky Town, Little Drop of Poison, like Accidentally in Love. Just so many perfect songs that just, they fit like a puzzle piece right with, you know, the film. But I would say my final honorable mention has to be Immigrant Song from Shrek the Third. Yeah.
Yeah, that one never gets any love.
And does anyone disagree with me, Shrek 2?
It would be a problem if they did, but go ahead.
Right.
Honestly, Shrek 2, the ending is just, it's so amazing.
Yeah.
The end credits
Agreed.
or whatever.
You just
Wait, you're
really
talking about
can't
the end
step to it.
credits?
Or not the end credits, I'm sorry, but whenever they're all singing at the end.
Oh, what's that?
Live and La Viva Loca or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah. I thought you were talking about the DVD special features, the Far, Far Away Idol, starring
Of course
Simon
you know what
Cowell.
that is.
That's
Of
another
course.
reason, though. That's an elite mini game right there.
Yes, it is.
An elite DVD mini game.
Man, I don't remember that one, but
Get hip, man.
of course you do.
Get hip.
Yeah, but does anybody... So nobody disagrees.
Nice, guys.
No.
Okay,
No,
awesome.
definitely
Yeah,
not.
taste. Yep, we love Shrek 2 over here. So this was so much fun. I enjoyed learning more about this album, Last Place in a Bear Race, and Smooth Cruise, and learning more about how you all worked together and made such an amazing album. So where can people find you and, stream the album, buy the album?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, spencermerkmusic.com. You can find the album on any streaming service. It's called Last Place in a Bear Race, and you can download it or purchase a physical CD on Bandcamp.
Awesome. Yes. Buy the album, stream the album, and we'll be excited to hear you guys perform it live. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being on. I had a lot of fun chatting with you guys. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
thank you, Jada.
Yeah,
and
of course.
it's been great seeing you out and about at the different venues and stuff. It's great to have someone that appreciates what we're doing.
Of course. Yeah, you guys are the best. Love you guys. You guys are so talented. Yep.
Thank you, Jada.
That's it means a lot that you wanted to talk with us. That's so cool.
Of course, yeah. You guys really put out tight stuff. Thank you for listening to In My Tracks. The show was created and produced by me, your host and friend, Jada Burt. And shout out to Play Audio Agency for producing, recording, and editing the show, and for composing the original theme music you are currently jamming out to. It is truly a labor of love, and I hope you enjoy it. To continue the fun, follow In My Tracks Pod on all social channels. Don't forget to use hashtag InMyTracksPod to share the songs that stopped you in your tracks. Looking to discover even more awesome music? Follow In My Tracks Pod on Spotify for weekly playlists. And please remember to follow the show so you don't miss an episode. And leave a review if you're enjoying it. See you next time!